Hello everyone. I hope you've been having a really good week. It's great to read what you're up to on the Facebook page. This week I wanted to have a bit of a chat with you about taking care of yourself, about self-care. That's not something that we really do very well. And a few days ago I listened to an interview with Chantal Pierrat. She's the CEO and founder of Emerging Women Live. And you can find her at emergingwomenlive.com if you want to have a look at her and what she's doing, where she's come from, find out a little bit more about her. Amazing interview, and I really found it fascinating. She talked about being and doing, something that we probably all battle with. I know I do. You know, that whole thing of doing often gets in the way of just being. It was an excellent interview, and I really enjoyed her down-to-earth approach to business and to life generally. Essentially, the interview was about leadership, and her definition of leadership was something that really resonated with me, and I think it will with you too. What Chantal said was, leadership is living life on the outside that is congruent with what's on the inside. So that's living life on the outside, showing up every day, wherever you are, in a way that is congruent with what's happening on the inside. So that means living life generally. It's in relationships, it's in work, it's in everything that we do. But if we're not doing that, and many of us don't, we're often not honest with ourselves about it. We're not honest with ourselves about what's holding us back, what's stopping us from living in congruence. We tend to just keep moving along in the doing mode without really thinking about what's stopping us from being who we're meant to be, who we know we're meant to be. And to do that, we need to be self-aware, we need to be compassionate, we need to be empathetic and non-compromising when it comes to our values, when it comes to what's important to us. So we can live a life of congruence, but those other things really have to be a part of the way we live. We need to live a mindful life. And while we could talk about all of those things, what I really want to talk to you about today is self-compassion. I was interested to hear Chantal say that the biggest thing in caring for herself is self-compassion. And she says that every day she finds herself, it could be 100 times a day, just hand on the heart, and I'll talk to you a little bit about what that means later. But every day she finds herself in lots of situations, as many of us do, where we can beat ourselves up or we can be kind and compassionate to ourselves. So I've got some notes here, so I want to make sure that I talk to you about all the things I want to talk to you about. I talked last week a little bit about that critical inner voice, and one of the biggest things that stops us in our tracks, that stops us from doing what we're passionate about, that stops us from living our best life, from living in congruence with what we know is inside of us, is that sense of not being good enough. That critical inner voice shouts this at us often, even in the small things of life. So when that happens, often what we do instead of being kind and compassionate to ourselves is we beat ourselves up and we go with that critical inner voice. Self-compassion grows out of mindfulness, out of awareness of who we are, and that thing of knowing we don't have to be brilliant at anything before we start practicing self-compassion. You don't have to be brilliant at practicing mindfulness before you start practicing self-compassion. It's free and it works. You know, there's a lot of science that tells us that self-compassion is powerful. That practice of self-compassion enables us to grow in so many other areas of our life. So it's really important. It's actually better than a massage, if you really want to know. Or a magnesium float. A friend of mine just had one of those yesterday. But, you know, that practice of self-compassion can do just as well for us as anything like that. And you can do it anytime and anywhere. So this, the evidence out there tells us that self-kindness and self-criticism operate from different parts of the brain. They actually, in terms of brain function. So, for example, just imagine you fail at something. Let's say a job interview. You go to a job interview and you don't get the job. Now imagine reacting to this in a self-critical way, which is probably a way most of us would react. You know all the things you would say. So just sit there for a minute and imagine yourself getting the letter to say that you didn't get the job, that really you didn't do too well at the interview. Imagine what you would say to yourself. And now, see if you can switch that and react to the news in a kind way. What would you say to yourself if you were reacting in a self-compassionate way, if you were showing yourself some kindness? I hope you have some words that you would say to yourself. What was it like to do those two different things? Write some of what happened below on the Facebook page. I'd really like to know. Now here's what happens in the brain. When we are critical of ourselves, when we beat ourselves up for making a mistake or for not doing as well as we wanted to, the part of the brain that lights up is the part of the brain that is involved in processing error and in problem solving. So if we fail, what the brain does is go into overdrive, trying to figure out what we did wrong, why it happened, how we could have changed things, what we could have done differently. We begin to ruminate on all the things we perceive as lack in us, all the negative things about us that caused us to fail. So we react with frustration, or we might react with anger, or we might go into a downward spiral of bad or sad mood. On the other hand, when we're kind to ourselves, when we are reassuring towards ourselves, the areas of the brain that respond are those associated with positive emotions and compassion. So instead of seeing ourselves as a problem to be fixed, self-kindness allows us to see ourselves as a valuable human being worthy of care. Now, isn't that much better? It is. Kristin Neff, who is a compassion researcher, says that when we experience warm and tender feelings towards ourselves, we are actually altering our bodies as well as our mind. Rather than feeling worried and anxious, we begin to feel calm, content, trusting and secure, even in painful experiences. So self-kindness allows us to feel safe, even when we're responding to those painful and difficult experiences, so that we're no longer operating from that place of fear. You know, think about how much anxiety there is in the world today. There's just way too much of it. And once we let go of insecurity and we can pursue our dreams with the confidence needed to actually achieve them, that makes such a big difference to ourselves. So we're born with this physiological ability, though, to respond to 3 self-compassion triggers. And it's amazing that that is actually a part of us. We can do that for ourselves. So this is really good. The triggers are physical warmth, gentle touch, and soothing vocalization. Just imagine what you do when you're trying to calm and soothe a baby. You touch the baby, you speak softly and gently to the baby, and you usually cuddle the baby. There's that physical warmth. So even when we're full of a storyline about how inadequate we are, when we're feeling a failure, when we're isolated, when we're full of shame, all those things, we can actually use our body as a vehicle for accessing our own inner compassion. Now, isn't that a better way to live than beating ourselves up? I know it is for me. I still find it difficult at times, but I am getting much better at it. All right, so to finish this video, we're going to do a short self-compassion activity. And this self-compassion meditation is available to you on the website, so you can download it and practice it. And I'm pretty sure that once you've done it a couple of times, you won't need to listen to the audio. You'll just be able to do it. So let's do the self-compassion meditation. All right. Now, this meditation helps you to become more compassionate with yourself and others, but best not to try while driving or stopped at the traffic lights. To start with, just close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, and begin to observe the rise and fall of your belly as you breathe. Just breathing gently. You don't have to focus on it in any way. Just notice your breath, but don't think about it. Now take a moment to tune in to your entire body. What can you feel in this moment? Can you notice the air around your face? What sounds can you hear around you? And now, just place your hand on your heart, either left or right, it doesn't matter. Feel the warmth flowing from your hand to your heart. Just notice it. Or perhaps you could imagine that you're holding your heart like it's something really precious, like a rare gem or a tiny animal. And as you do this, just continue to breathe naturally. And keeping your hand on your heart, offer yourself some words of kindness. You could compliment yourself on being kind and caring, for making a good decision recently. Or you could give yourself some encouragement if you're facing a challenge. Just say these words to yourself as you continue to breathe with your hand on your heart. And this is self-compassion. It's being kind to ourselves. Just notice what it feels like. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and bring your attention back into the room. I hope you found that helpful. So go into the rest of the week. Be kind to yourself. Show yourself some self-compassion. And let those areas of your brain light up that are going to encourage you to be kind and compassionate. And say positive things. Build those pathways.